Hi and welcome to this next video tutorial. In the last video tutorial we have added this board REST interface, so we have added the board model, we have added the board controller, and we have added this route. So just to repeat one more time, so the router specifies the URL that we type into the browser. So for example, localhost/port, and then we have an optional parameter called ID. So either we can just add port or we can also add the ID. Regardless which of these URLs we add, when we type in one of these URLs, then it will be linked to this board controller. And when we go into this board controller, then based on the operation that with which we send the URL, so if is it the get, post, put, or delete request, one of these functions will be executed. And if nothing is parsed here over the URL, so if the URL is /port, then it will go into this method. If the URL is /port and then /the ID, then this method will be executed. So when this method is executed, we will perform the query, and the query will contain this board entity, which is basically the table. So here we have specified the table board with its columns, and give back the results. So in this tutorial, what we will do is we will create a relationship. So as we have seen here, so we have been modeling this board controller over here with all these functions, and now we will add this post controller and post model, and then we will hook up the board controller and the post controller. So that's because when we add a post, then each post will belong to a board. So we will go onto a board, we will post something on this board. So there will always be a board ID to which this post belongs to. So how do we do that in Aqueduct? So when we go onto the Aqueduct website, then if you go into the guides and here into modeling data relationships, then you will find information on how to do that. And when we scroll down here, for example, here we see we have two classes. So one is basically two models. One is the city model and one is the country model. And if we want to connect the city and the country together, so when we say a country has one capital, which is a city, then what we do is in the city model, we specify this, we say we have a country, and in the country we specify we have a city with a capital name. And then we define in one of these models, we define a relate column. So we say this country relates to exactly one capital. And what will happen here in the database is that a field will be created called country ID. And the country ID will then basically be associated with this ID here. So we have different kind of examples here. So there is not only one-to-one relationship, we also have one-to-many relationships. So we will model a one-to-many relationship, and you can see there is also a many-to-many relationship. So just have a look through it, and once you understood how we model the one-to-many relationship, then you should be able to figure the rest out. So that's the theory. Let's go into practice. So first, we will create a new model called post.start. Then we will define a post class again, underscore post. This will have an int ID. This will have a string text. Then it will also have a date time created at, and it will have a date time updated at. This will be a primary key again. So we will annotate it with primary key. And these will all be columns again. You don't necessarily have to annotate it with add column. I'm just doing it because I like to do it, but it's not really necessary. So you can also keep this away, add column. Add column. And add column. Okay, then we still need to import Aqueduct.dart. Okay, that looks better. And what we also have to do is create the managed object class. So class post extends managed object underscore post implements underscore post. And here we of course have to say class. Okay, now that looks better. So that's how a class usually would look like, but now we will associate the post with a board. So basically we want in this post, we will want to have a foreign key of the board. So how do we do that? We will say board. For this, we will have to import this board model. And then we will relate posts. And that should be it. Okay, so basically what we did here, we said, okay, we have this board ID, and this is related to posts. So now that we have done that, we also need to add a statement in board.start, And here we have to say it will be a one-to-many relationship, which means we will have to add a managed set posts. And here we also need to import this post model. So basically what this does, it's this managed set basically is the same like a list. So we will have a list of posts assigned to this board model. And there is exactly one board which belongs to a post. So now that we have done that, we should be ready to make use of this relationship. So when we go back to the website and we look at the one-to-many relationship, we have this example here. We have, in this case, we have author, we have a book, and a book will always relate to an author, and an author might have many books. So you understand how this fits together. And like said before, this managed set is basically nothing else than a list of books that it will get through this book model. Okay, so now that we have that, we can go back to the code and we can add our controller called post controller.start. And this will be boring because you will see a lot of what we did in the last video. So we will just add a class post controller extends resource controller. The resource controller is defined in Aqueduct. Then here we need to inject the context again. So the database context. So here we say post controller this dot context. So that's the constructor, and now we still need to define this context variable, which is final managed context. So then we will create an operation get. So we say future response get all posts async. So then here we define the query again, which is final post query equals query post with the database context. Okay, we still need to add the post model. And then we say final posts equals await post query dot fetch. Then return response dot OK posts. Okay, so that does nothing else than just list all the posts. regardless of the board. We will come to this on a later stage. So we will also add a query which will actually be related to a board directly, but let's add the normal queries first. So then we will have an operation. So this will be an operation get. That's operation.get. Then we will have another add operation.get with the ID. Future response get one post. Async final posts query equals query posts, post context. Where P T P dot ID dot equal to ID. And of course, what we will need to do here, we will need to get the ID from the URL. So we will say at binds.pass ID. That will be an integer ID. Okay. Then we say again final post equals await post query dot fetch one. And then we say if post equals null, return response dot not found. So this is in case we could not find the post, and if it was found, then we can return response dot OK post. Okay, that's it. Then we can go to the next one. Then we will go to the add operation dot post future response create post async. Okay, so here we need to parse the body again. So at binds.body post. Okay, so here we just add some values. So we say post.created at equals date time.now. Post.updated at equals date time.now as well. Then we declare the query, final query equals query post context values equals post. Then we say final insert post equals await query dot insert. Return response dot okay. Inserted post. Inserted. What does it? What unnecessary parentheses can be removed? Oh, like this, yeah. Okay, so that's the post. So basically here we just added these parameters to, well, we got all the JSON parameters into this post. So this post object will have a created at and an updated at column inside it already, but it's still unassigned. And so that's why we can assign datetime.now directly like this. And then we will just create our query where we add the value post, and then we can just insert this value into the database. In the post.start, we have this date time updated at and date time created at, and what we do in the post controller here is we just parse all the JSON which doesn't contain the date time, you know, well, it doesn't contain the created at and updated at in the JSON request. So we will just add it here. Okay, so next we need to define the update query. So that will be at operation.put future response update post async. Never forget this async, because otherwise you will get really strange error messages. But it should, basically VS Code should tell you already that there is an error if you don't add it. So here we will parse the ID again, because we will update based on the ID. And then here we will add the ID and the body. So first let's add the ID, binds.pass ID int ID, and then we will also bind body post. So let's define the query. Final query equals query post. Let's say update query post, and we add the database context, and then we say where p.id equal to ID equal to should be written like this. Oh, here is the problem. Okay. Values equals to post. So it just said get the post where ID is equal to ID, and then we add the post parameters again, and then we can say return response dot okay await query dot update 1. This should be update query. Okay, so now we have updated the post. Then we also delete the posts at operation.delete. Future response delete post. Async. Here we say we need to get the ID again, so we say add binds.pass ID int ID. Then we define the query, final delete query equals query post context. Where p.id dot equal to ID, and then we return response dot okay await query delete query dot delete. Okay, and that was it. basically what we did here was nothing else than the same like in the board controller, but we needed to have these functions as well. Maybe it was a good repetition of certain things. But now, as a next step, we will also need to create a query which gets all posts to a board, and that's what we will do next. Okay, so let's write this query that will get all the posts to a board. For this, we will add a new controller, which will be called board post controller.start class board posts. Controller extends resource controller. And here we need to add Aqueduct. So here we will have a constructor board post controller. This dot context. We have done this several times now, and then we will define final managed context. And now we will create an operation get, operation.get, and we will parse an ID. And this will be the ID to the board. Let's go further. This will be now a little bit more sophisticated because we will also add fetch limit and offset, which are functions which are basically methods to limit the amount of records that we want to get back. So I thought you might be interested to see how this works as well. Future response get posts by board. That's what we want to do. Then we say add binds dot binds dot pass ID integer ID. So that's what we will pass over the URL. Then at bind.query. Now we will actually get the query parameters that we can pass. So this will be fetch limit, int fetch limit, and this will also be bind.query offset, int offset. Okay, then we can make it a little bit more readable. So we just say this, then we will have to say async. This will be this function here. Okay, now we can create our query again. So final query equals query post. Yeah. So what we will do now is we will query for all posts with a specific board ID. So that's why we query for posts with the database context. Then we will say dot sort by dot created at query sort order dot descending. Okay, so here we basically say we want to have everything sorted by the created at date with the newest posts at the top. Then we will say where p dot id dot equal to id, so which we parse here. But here it's not p.id, here it will be p.board.id. So that will basically search, if you think of it in terms of SQL, it will just say select star from posts where board underscore ID, which is the foreign key to the board, equals to the ID. So I hope this makes sense. Dot fetch limit equals fetch limit, and dot offset equals offset. And then here we have to import the post model again. And that's the whole query. Then we say final posts equals wait query dot fetch, and then return response dot okay posts. So just to repeat again, what we do is here is in the pass we add the board ID, which will be this ID here. Then we will add a fetch limit and an offset. So basically we say, okay, how much entries should be fetched and from which position should it be fetched. And then we will execute this query. We will sort by the created at column in descending order, where the board ID equals to the ID that we passed over here. Then we will define the fetch limit, so how much entries, and the offset, so where should it start. And then we will just execute this query. It will pass back several results, and this is what we will pass back as response in JSON format again. So that's that. So next we will test everything out. For this we will have to stop Aqueduct, so we'll just stop it here because we have started it over the main.start before and not over Aqueduct serve. So for development, usually I'm always starting here with debugging, so that I can set debugging entries so that I can see what's in the variables. So I will also start it this way again. Start debugging. And it is started. So now we can go into Postman and we can execute all the queries again. So I will just come back in a moment. Okay, so we have an empty GET request here. So let's add all the parameters again that we need and the URL. So we will connect to HTTP //localhost 8888 / posts for the beginning, which should return all the posts. Then we also need to add some headers. We will have to add content type application/JSON, and we will have to add accept application/JSON. Okay. Then we will just query 404 not found. So we will have to check what's missing. Ah, of course, I know what's missing. What we still have to do first is we will have to define the channel.dart file, the router in the channel.dart file. So here we will add the router .root post/id again, and create a link. Which will go to post controller, and we'll parse the context. And then we will have to import this post controller again. Okay, so that's it. So you see it's really logic. We have this channel file, and in this channel we have all these URLs, and these URLs will just execute these controllers. Let's also add another router, router.root, that will be /port/id /posts.link, and here we link to the port post controller, also with the database context. And we will also have to import it, and that's it. Okay, so next we will refresh. I don't have to actually stop. Okay, we got an error. What does it say? Invalid controller, control post controller has operations is bound with okay, so it seems to have a problem in this post controller. So let's go in this post controller. Then it said in the delete. Yeah, because here we need to define this ID. Which we then parse to here. So that should be it. So let's try to restart again. So I think it exited. So we will just start debugging again. And let's see if it works now. So it didn't complain anymore. So we can try to run this once again. 500 internal server error. Let's check what's wrong here. So it says here relation underscore posts does not exist. Okay, now this is because we didn't actually create the database yet. So let's do that as a next step. So you also get now a little bit. So you also get now the error messages and what they mean. So it's pretty logical actually. It says straight away here, hey, Postgres SQL has an issue because it cannot find this post relationship. It does simply not exist. So we still need to do that. So let's stop here for a moment. And then we will go into the terminal. And then we will have to execute this query again. So I will just be back in a moment. So in order to upgrade the database, what we will have to do, we will have to run an upgrade command. So Aqueduct db upgrade. Here we need to specify the username and all the settings again. So this will be port, oh man. Why doesn't it work? Okay, never mind. Port underscore user. The password will be password, localhost, port looks okay, and then the database is port. Let's execute this. Is already at version 1, which means we might need to run Aqueduct db generate first. Aqueduct db generate. So because the db generate will basically now run through all the models again and might create a new migration file. I think this is what will happen. So what does it say? So it says adding table underscore posts. New file is located in this location, and this location is in migrations here. So it created this. This has now the post table in it. So I guess this is what we will need to upgrade. So here we should now be able to run this upgrade command. And hopefully this will do the trick. Okay, cool. So it says the schema was applied. So what we can do is we can go into the database quickly to check if this table was actually created. So we'll say localhost 8080. Let's try. No. I think we can get to the database. Do we have it somewhere? No, I might just have to go into here again, open PG admin 4. We have done this before already. This will then connect automatically. Let's go on to servers, Postgres. Okay. Databases, this is the board database. I think it's schemas, tables. And you can see it has added this posts table. And if we look here, then we have this ID text created that, updated that, and here you can see it has automatically created this board ID, board_ID for us. So I hope now you understand what we basically modeled before. Okay, now that we have that, we can try once again. So I thought it's okay this time when I show you some of the errors and how I try to resolve them, because you might trip over them as well. So here we will say start debugging again. Go into the debug console. This has started. This is okay. So we go into Postman again. And if we run the command now, let's see what happens. Aha. So here we get back an empty array, and this means that it queries the database successfully. And of course, we get back an empty array because we didn't add any data yet. So that actually worked. So now the next thing is adding data. And how would we add posts now? So here we will need to add this post, but we will have to actually say to which board ID it will belong to. So let's check if we have some board IDs defined already. Slash board. Yeah, we have one board defined already with the ID 1. So we will now create the posts entry with this ID 1. So let's go back to posts. Run it, empty array, then we will change to posts. We will go into body, we will say raw. And here we will now define all the parameters. So when we put this over here a little bit, let's go into the posts.start. So we will say text is, this is my first post to this board. And then we will say boards ID 1. I think what we have to do here is we have to say board I'm a little bit unsure about that. Let's just try. I hope this is correct. Well, let's just yep, so I've done the correct thing. This should work, so let's send. We get back the result, with status 200, which means it should have worked. So when we go back to get, send, then we can actually see that it has edited this record with the board ID 1. And that was one of the most complicated things for me to understand, that I can't just create an attribute called board underscore ID, but I will need to, add this ID here. But once you got the hang of it, then it will be okay. So I needed a Stack Overflow message for this, but I hope this will help you, so you don't have to figure this out on your own. Okay, so we have added this entry. Let's add a second post. So we'll say post again. We will go here and we will add a second post called "This is my second post to this board." Send. Worked as well. So when we go on to get again, then we should have these two. Okay, this has actually worked. So now let's try to get post/1, post/2. So these individual posts are appearing, which is okay. Then let's add third post. Let's go to the body again. This is my third post to this board. Send. Okay, has been added. Then we will say /posts/3 as put, and this is my third and last post to this board. Let's change it to this. Send. It actually changed. So when we go back to get and get our posts, then we have 3, and this is my third and last post. So the update entry was actually working as well. And then we still have to delete. So we will say /post/3. We want to delete the third entry. Let's go to delete. Send. We get back 1. Let's see what happens. And what we have the 1 and the 2 and the 3 is gone, and we got back a 1 because it resulted in true. So you can return a JSON kind of response. I leave that up to you to figure out how this works exactly. But what we have seen now, we could add a post and assign it to a board. So we have done all of this. So now we still have to test this board post controller. So here we need to first of all look how does the URL look like. So here it's /board/id/posts. So /boards, and then we will have the board ID 1 and then slash posts. And this should now basically display all the posts, but this will most likely not work because we have specified the parameters as mandatory. So when we query this, error missing required query parameters, fetch limit, and offset. So if we would want to define these as optional, then we could do that when we go into the board post controller and we want to have them optional, then we can just basically add these parentheses around them. So we could just do this. And this specifies that this is, or let's do it like this. So this would then specify that these both parameters are optional. But if we define them like this, then Aqueduct will actually tell us, hey, you didn't specify these parameters, and you need to specify them now. So that's what we will do. We will say question mark fetch limit equals 10 plus offset equals 0 or 1. I don't know, I forgot. So let's see what happens like this. Send. So this will create, we only have added 2 queries. So this says return the last 2 queries with an offset of 0. If we would say return 1 query, then it will just return 1. If we say 2, it will be the first 2. So if we say 1 here and with offset of 1, then we will have this 1. So now we have specified a query which we can basically search with a limit inside. So I hope this helped you. So I hope this tutorial helped you. In the next tutorials, we will go into the guts of Aqueduct. We will actually do some more advanced stuff which are not standard. So hopefully you will like these tutorials again. So have a good day. See you in the next tutorial. Bye-bye.